In a time of hardship and oppression against the family of the Holy Prophet, Imam Hussain stood for justice and died protecting his faith. With the principles of Islam at stake, the Imam's incomprehensible patience remained unwavering while he was made to witness the inhumane slaughtering of his family and companions. In the face of oppression, the Imam's bravery and courage withheld any obstacle put before him. Placing his complete trust in Allah, he was able to speak out against the wrongdoings of those in power. His fearless determination stands as an inspiration and example for all of humanity. The sacrifice of Imam Hussain has put the responsibility in our court to do what is within our capacity to uphold the message of Islam and fight back against the oppression of today. One way in which we are able to preserve the message of Imam Hussain will be to spread what he stood for: justice, peace, love, and compassion. If not directly, then by donating to those who have dedicated their efforts to propagating the message of Hussain. Muslim women from across the UK decided that they would embark on the challenge to keep the name of Imam Hussain alive, to climb Mount Ben Nevis, the tallest mountain in all of the British Isles located in Scotland. They set a financial target and went about to raise the money in form of sponsorships from those around. Not only did they aim to push the message of Islam out, they also wanted to break past the cultural limitations and stereotypes surrounding Muslim women. It demonstrated to those who continue to shackle the Muslim women of their communities, as well as the non-Muslims, the power and determination of Muslim women able to reach the peak of a mountain whilst maintaining their hijab. From amongst the group of women, there was Zahra Al-Alawi, a public speaker and television presenter for Ahlulbayt TV. She has done various speeches and seminars discussing religion as well as a wide range of social issues present today. With her went Abir Safa, a young poet whose limericks preach the message of Islam and social justice around the world. She has performed at countless events and is a student at the Islamic Hausa. The men, having previously completed the trek to the summit of Ben Nevis, raised the stakes, challenging themselves even further as they embarked on a journey to Africa with the aim of climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. Across the continent, Mount Kilimanjaro is the highest mountain, rising to a peak of 5,895 meters high with 3 volcanic cones: Kibo, Mwenzi, and Shira. It is a dormant volcano in Tanzania. Taking on this challenge was a large group including Hussein Sajjad Hussein, a producer at Ahlulbayt TV, and many others. These two groups of people began their journey to the peaks as they scale Hussein's summit. The sisters who embarked on this journey were inspired to overcome this challenge and to make it to the highest point in all of the UK. It was an opportunity for them to embark on a new experience to tackle the task of climbing up a mountain.
2 main factors motivating me to take the challenge. First of all, I really like doing things out of my comfort zone and taking on challenges and proving myself.
When I heard about the Ben Nevis challenge, initially I didn't sign up because I had so many other commitments. 1 week before the climb, a couple of brothers from the office approached me and said, "Why don't you take the Ben Nevis challenge?" I'm not the type that takes on these physical challenges usually, and I really wanted to challenge myself. I think every human being should challenge themselves, whether it's intellectually, physically, and I'm always the type of person that likes new adventures, new challenges, and just to push myself further, whether it's in education or physically.
What motivated me to go on the climb was the fact that, 1, we were climbing a mountain, and 2, it was for a good cause. Where I come from, we don't really have trips that are organized like this, so I found it as a good opportunity.
Usually you see big groups of brothers doing different kind of things, taking flags to other places and representing Islam, but you never see sisters doing that. So for me, it felt really important that I see women doing this and trying to represent Islam with their hijab and their abaya.
One of the misconceptions surrounding Islam is the idea that the religion oppresses women and hijab restricts them from getting involved within society. Hijab is a form of protection for women, allowing them to get involved in society, yet not being limited to the prejudgments made based on their physical appearance, but can rather be taken for their abilities.
I was this year's group leader for the Ahlulbayt TV's Kilimanjaro expedition. I've also been fortunate to have organised 2 previous expeditions to Mount Ben Nevis, which is the highest mountain in the UK or the British Isles. And having successfully organised those 2 climbs, members from within those groups and family and friends had asked me to organise something more spectacular, something more challenging. And that is when the idea to organise Kilimanjaro came into fruition.
I have a passion for mountaineering and hiking. And I've always wanted to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. I used to live in Kenya back in the 80s, and we had come very close to going into Tanzania. But because of border clashes during those days, we couldn't go over. Ever since then, the dream has remained with me, and that's like about 30 years.
Within the Quran, on repeated occasions, Allah mentions mountains. Do they not see how firmly we have established the mountains? It is as if Allah is proud of His own creation and wants the people to ponder over it. There is something so majestic yet subtle about the mountains. The teams, keeping in mind the commands of Allah, embark on this journey.
The journey in itself was that we leave London, we sleep on the coach, so there was no place that we stopped by to sleep. We'll sleep and eat on the coach. We'll arrive in the morning and no rest. Straight away in the morning, we had to climb the mountain. So there was absolutely no rest for about 2 days. I had hardly any sleep. I hadn't slept for 2 days, and then we had to climb the mountain. So it was a bit difficult, but definitely did motivate me more.
Journey to Scotland was very tiring. We didn't get enough rest or sleep, and we were very tired. And when we had to get there, after an hour of us getting there, we had to climb. But our group was very nice, and we actually had a lot of fun together, and it allowed us a time to bond together and know each other even more.
Mount Ben Nevis is the tallest mountain in the UK, and it is estimated to take up to 8 hours to climb. The path throughout is steep, and the upper section, being very stony and rough, is often covered in snow, making it tough to follow the path. Climbing a mountain is physically and mentally a very strenuous activity and requires ample amount of preparation and training beforehand in order for them to be fit enough to take on the challenge.
My preparation for Kilimanjaro was essentially going for runs and jogs. And I also bought this exercise bike from Amazon, and I was practicing on that for a few weeks, but it wasn't very extensive.
In preparation for the climb, we'd done lots of cycling. I sometimes walked to work. It's about 2-3 miles away from my home, so I did that for practice. We also climbed the Mount Snowdon in Wales a couple times. We also did Snowdon when it had snowed, so we could give ourselves the experience of trudging through snow and to give ourselves an experience of more difficult trekking. We'd also done Malverns in the night time, so that we could get nighttime experience of hiking, and also testing the equipment we had, like our headlamps and how well our jackets would function in the chill.
Before that, I never been to Africa, and it was in my mind there was a totally different picture about Africa. But when I got there, it was amazing. It was beautiful, and as well as the people of Africa are very nice, very helpful, and slopes of Kilimanjaro, I cannot say anything that I can forget those slopes for the rest of my life. It was amazing.
The team set out on a coach from Tanzania to the bottom of the mountains. As the group had all just met each other before heading towards the mountain, they were able to use the time on the bus to get to know one another.
And so the 12-hour journey that we had taken by coach from Dar es Salaam to Marangu, which is just before the gates of Kilimanjaro, we had utilized these 12 hours to get to know each other within the group. We were people who had come from the US, from the UK, from Tanzania, from Kenya. The 16 or the 19 of us that were in the on the bus, we had utilized this time to get to know each other. and just to build that bond, that relationship, because of course, we were going to spend the next 6 days together.
When I first saw the mountain from where we were starting the climb, I was a bit surprised as to how far it was, and the fact that we were going to be at the top within only 3.5 days, it kind of took me by surprise. So that was the main feeling, like really it's quite far and the amount of time we have is quite short. So it was more a surprise as to are we actually going to get there in the time that we've been allocated.
And the earth, we spread it out and cast therein firmly set mountains, and we have made to grow therein of all beautiful kinds, to give sight and as a reminder to every servant who turns to Allah.
The first difficulty was climbing a mountain, the highest mountain in Britain, and having absolutely no sleep for 2 days. So we're already exhausted. Very early on in the climb, as soon as we climbed, we were climbing for half an hour or 1 hour. And I was determined. I really felt like we were a group. Us women, we went together as a group to climb this mountain as a group. And very early on in the climb, we were climbing the mountain, and just below us, so some girls were a bit faster than the other group of ladies, and then we had 2 guides with us. So one of the guys said that one of your team members have slipped and has injured her knee. And that was really difficult for me because I went as a supervisor of the event. I went to as a supervisor for the ladies, and I really wanted everyone to reach the summit. Just to hear that one of our ladies, one of our team members had fallen and injured her knee was very difficult for me. And I think that really had a down point on me during the climb, because I really wanted to go and stay with her and be with her, but at the same time I wanted to reach the summit. So it was kind of wanting to be in 2 places at a time.
I kind of persevered in the way that I was very committed and very motivated to try to get as far as I could, just because I saw all of the other sisters with me. They all were like chanting Labbaika ya Hussein. They were all saying, I'm doing this for Saida Zahra, etc., etc. So their support and their motivation was a huge aspect as to how far I came into my climb.
The mountain average temperature through the year is just below freezing, at minus 0.5 degrees. In an average year, the summit sees 261 gales and receives 4,350 millimeters of rainfall. Not the easiest conditions to climb up in.
Halfway through the climb, as soon as we reached the halfway point, the weather was so beautiful before. When we reached halfway point, it just suddenly started to rain very heavily. There was gale force winds, and I remember a couple of girls telling me that we can't breathe because of the wind. The wind was so strong that we couldn't even breathe. I remember I took my hijab and I done this and I covered my nose and my mouth because the wind was so strong. And when you're trying to climb up and the wind was hitting us, we couldn't breathe and the wind was very difficult.
I remember at one point climbing with a sister, and because we were separated into 2 groups, if someone is more fast-paced, they would be in the first group, and if you're a little bit slower, you'd be in the second group, just so we were able to reach the top in the designated amount of time that we had. And one of the sisters, she really struggled at one point to continue, and I remember she was sitting there and she began to cry, and I was asking her, I was like, what's wrong? Stay motivated, we're doing this for a good cause. And she's like, I'm sitting here very upset and struggling trying to climb this mountain, but she's like, in reality, I'm crying for the masa'ib of Sayyida Zainab alayhi salam, because she went through so much and she didn't even complain. Yet here we are, we're facing these trials, though we've decided to take this trip upon ourselves. But she was saying that her motivation and her emotion towards the Ahlulbayt alayhim salam was present throughout the trip that we were there. And I personally looked at her as an inspiration, because I would see her, and even in her darkest moments on this trip, she would be in tears, but she would still be chanting Labbaika ya Hussein. She would still be calling upon the names of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam and the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She always had kept them in mind. And to see that, especially in this day and age, was something very beautiful and a lesson that I will always take with me.
Be sure there is something waiting for you after much patience, to astonish you to a degree that you forget the bitterness of your pain.
So the first day was fine. I got all my gear and I was trekking away. The second day, I actually discovered that I'd compressed one of my nerves in my shoulder. And so essentially what happened was my right arm was pretty useless. I couldn't lift it above, my waist. And that was the case for the rest of the climb, and even afterwards for like a good few weeks after as well.
The nights were very comfortable, actually. Mattresses were provided. We basically stayed in hikers' huts. Mattresses were provided. There were dining areas. There were washroom facilities. It's very comfortable and warm as well. We were provided with fresh food. One incident that I do remember very much, and luckily I had my camera on with me at that time as well, was that deep in the night I had to go to the washroom, and obviously it was very chilly and still. It was very dark. Luckily I had a very good headlamp. In that silence, all of a sudden you're all out all alone on the mountainside, and then you hear this piercing cackle of the colobus monkey. I mean, it really cut through the night. It was very, very scary, I have to say.
So throughout the climb, during those 5 days, you'd go through different climates, different zones. The first 2 days you'd climb through you'd walk through the rainforest, and the rainforest was a really beautiful, a very stunning setting. You would make your way, from the gate of Kilimanjaro, the Morango gate, and you would enter the rainforest immediately. And for 2 days, you were simply, plodding along, striving through the rainforest. And it was a beautiful rainforest. It wasn't just a random park where that you'd walk through, but rather the different types of trees, the different types of plantation that you would see, the condensation that was there within the area, within that particular environment. You'd see ants that are in large groups that you wouldn't see in other parts of the mountain. You'd see the one tree bend a certain way that you think, subhanallah, how is this like this? How can a tree climb or grow itself to be in this particular form? And it was absolutely stunning to walk through the rainforest. And then once you make it through the rainforest, you would walk through the desert. And then you'd walk through the moorland, before reaching the desert. You'd walk through the moorland and you'd see smaller, vegetation. As of course, you walk higher up the mountain, there is less water, so there's less vegetation. So you'd walk through, an area where the plantation are now smaller in size, and they're very unique to Kilimanjaro only. And then you'd walk through an area of complete desert. And so it was just, every day was different. It wasn't the same as the previous one. And walking through these days, I felt a sense of realization of Allah's bounties. And you would really know that there has to be a creator to make all of this happen.
And he placed on the earth firmly set mountains over its surface, and he blessed it and determined therein its creatures' sustenance in 4 days without distinction. The lower slopes of the mountains are covered by rainforests, home to a wide range of wildlife, including the colobus monkey, the honey badger, the olive baboon, plus countless more animals and birds. As you travel up the mountain, the level of vegetation decreases, and the habit becomes home to different breeds of insects and plants. The groups ventured out with the flags of Imam Hussain and Abu Fadl Abbas, hoping to rise them at the peaks of the mountain. Standing the flags up high symbolizes that with their inspiration and under the banner of the Ahlulbayt, whatever hardships we individually or as a community may face, holding on to the family of the Prophet and the message they stood for, we will be able to overcome these obstacles. Raising these flags in the highest points of the country gives the message that we maintain the principles of the Imam and his family, standing against tyranny and oppression, remaining firm on the side of justice.
And I remember one sister saying, she's like, because I have the flag of Abu Fadl al-Abbas in my backpack, I feel like he is granting me the power to continue, and he is my motivation. So to have the willpower, obviously granted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Ahlulbayt alayhim as-salam, it was really motivating and very inspirational, because we a lot of times when we would face a challenge or a difficulty while climbing Ben Nevis, we would all refer to the tragedies and the masa'ib of the Ahlulbayt alayhim as-salam. Every period of time we would sit down and have a snack, and we would all gather and we would talk about, you know what, this is so hard, we're so tired, but remember Saida Zainab alayhi salam when she was paraded from the streets of Kufa and Karbala and Sham. So having taken on this trip while having the Ahlulbayt alayhim as-salam as role models played a huge role in our success.
The group that actually went on to reach the summit, some of them wanted to turn back. The weather was undescribable. I've lived in London my whole life. I was born in London. I've never experienced weather conditions like that. Just being in the highest point in Britain and having gale force winds, and everyone wanted to turn back, and I said, no, we have to reach the summit. And I remember telling some of them, I said, I'm not going back. I'm definitely not going back. And we could see people coming back. We could see people that were nearly reaching the summit. They were 85% up. They were reaching back, and people were advising us, don't go up. The weather conditions are very bad. Don't go up. And I said, no, we have to go up. You know, we have to reach the summit. So by the time we reached the summit, we were going up, and we could like kind of see the summit. And everything was going through the only thing that was going through my mind is that we have to reach the top.
When we got to the top, I was just like, all I could do was just thank Sayyida Zainab, because she was the one who was my source of inspiration and strength. And I just couldn't believe that I actually did it. So it was very exhilarating feeling, and the fact that we took the flags of Abbas Dhalla on the summit was actually truly an honor that it's one of the experiences I cannot forget.
So we reached the top, and I said, I have to raise the flag. So as soon as we reached the top, the weather conditions were so bad that the guides turned to us and they said, you have 1 minute, less than 1 minute. Do what you have to do in the summit, and we're heading down. There was 3 of us that reached the summit, and I remember there was 2 coming after us, or 3 coming after us, but us 4 were the first people to reach the summit. And I remember quickly taking out the flag from my bag and putting it up, and then, you know, we waved the flag in the air and we took some pictures, and then the guide said, hurry up, we have to go down because the weather is becoming really bad. The only thing was going through my mind was, I've done it. I've reached my target, and I've raised the flag of Imam Hussain. I said, you know, Imam Hussain was sacrificed, and all the way in Britain now we're raising his flag as a sign of justice. Due to the political situation that's going on, due to the current climate, it was so important that we raised that flag of justice, an individual that was killed and martyred for the cause that we're all fighting today.
The weather on Mount Ben Nevis is arguably the most ferocious to be found anywhere in the UK. From hurricane force winds to whiteout blizzard conditions, it has everything. The weather can also change from clear and sunny to heavy rain and driving winds with almost no visibility within minutes and without any warning, making the trek very dangerous for even an experienced climber, let alone beginners. If not careful, these extreme conditions could have a profound impact on someone's health, as well as put them at the risk of death. Climbing Mount Kilimanjaro can take up to 9 days. Along the way, there are huts with beds and bathroom facilities for you to rest for the night to build up your energy for the day to come.
So you have 1 day of trekking, then you get to the huts, then you get another day of trekking, then to the huts, another day of trekking, and then to the huts. And then the summit night, you don't rest for the whole night after the third hut. You actually start climbing at nighttime, and we probably left around 12 midnight roughly, and we got to the summit around 12 in the afternoon. So it was literally 12 hours of trekking without having a proper night's sleep.
Major difficulties I faced when climbing Kilimanjaro was climbing the mountain with my backpack. After day 2.5 or 3 onwards, I started having a very sore back. It wasn't easy for me to walk 8-9 hours a day and carry my bag at the same time. It was very tough. We're told to have about 2 or 3 liters of water per day, and to carry 3 liters of water on your back, you might find it very, very small, but once you have it, on you for 3 days approximately, it can take its toll. And certainly I found it very difficult, excruciating on my shoulders, on my neck, and a bit on my back as well, to continue moving forward. so I used the assistance of the mountain guides to help carry my bag for maybe an hour or two, moving forward from that moment onwards.
The weather was cold and freezing winds, and by the point of Gilmans, when we were heading towards Uhuru, and I can see the point, but on the way I was puking with blood, and altitude sickness was hitting me hard, and I've tried my best to go further, but as my health or altitude sickness was quite bad, so I have to basically start descent before it going further.
Couldn't make it to the top. It was at Kibo at approximately 15,500 feet that altitude sickness really hit me. I had a severe headache. I felt nauseous. I had blurred vision. I couldn't walk straight. It was at around 12 at night, just before the summit attempt, that the head guide came and asked me if I was all right, if I was ready to go. And I explained to him how I was feeling. So he suggested that I should try and walk towards the outskirts of the camp and come back and see how I felt. I did that, and I came back and reported that it wasn't right. I had a very intense, very strong instinct telling me to abort mission, because I had one other thing that in mind, I thought, which was why the instinct had kicked in. It is because I have a disabled child, and my wife, she's very patient. She really looks after the entire family, and obviously a bit vice versa. But I didn't want to end up with any medical problem at that time, or as a consequence of it, for her to handle for the rest of her life. So I decided that it would be wise that I abort mission and make an attempt sometime later in my life.
The target I set for myself, as I mentioned previously, was to get to Uhuru Point. And mentally, I was prepared to take all it required for me to get there. The night climb, the first few hours were relatively easy. I mean, when we started the night climb at about 12:30 at night, there was a point that is known as the Wahindi Point, which is translated as the Indian Point. It's not a formal point, but it's an informal point that the mountain guides use to reference a point where most Indians or Asians would turn back from the mountain. And so I said to myself, I need to at the very least go past this point. It'll be embarrassing for me to make it back from Wahindi Point. So once I got to Wahindi, and I was like, well, this is pretty easy. If I can make it this far, surely I can make it all the way to Uhuru. But after Wahindi Point, the informal point, we get to Hansmire Cave. And from Hansmire to Gilmans, that was the toughest part of the entire experience. It was very, very physical, and it was getting really cold. It was nearing just before Fajr at that point, so it was really, really nippy. And then once the sun came out, once I saw how far Gilman's Point was, I was scared. I thought, okay, am I actually going to make it to Gilman's?
Travelling at a higher altitude can negatively affect one's health. Being at a higher altitude means the air pressure is lower, hence fewer oxygen particles are present in the air. With less oxygen available in the body redistributes the blood, decreasing the amount sent to the digestive organs and increasing the level of oxygenated blood sent to the vital organs. This plays as a trigger to the symptoms of nausea and vomiting. Be patient. The sorrow will be replaced with joy, and the difficulty will be replaced with ease.
Not being able to get to the summit was very upsetting for me. Even though we went halfway up, it was still really, I felt really upset because I went there to go all the way up and I only made it halfway, even though they told me that halfway is still really far away, and I think it's 770 or 50 meters up or something like that. And they were like, you did amazingly well, But when everybody came back to the hostel, I felt a bit small and devastated. And I was very determined to go all the way up. But if it was not for the weather, I would have made it to the summit with the other sisters, and the weather just was really, really bad. The rain was just like needles sticking into the face, so we didn't have enough layers either to go all the way up. And we was told that if we go and carry on, we'd get into a cold shock and then we'd possibly die and not be able to get back down.
I remember this so clearly that I was like, Ya Allah, I am in the highest point of Britain, and I came to raise the flag of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. I came to do good. And if you are satisfied with my actions and what I have done, then please get me down this mountain in peace. And I said, I'm freezing. I'm going to freeze if and there's no way that I can get down. And then I remember the guide came to me and she said, I have some spare clothes in my bag. And I was thinking, after like 2 minutes of being up there, absolutely freezing, it was actually more than, I don't know how long it was. It seems so long. She came and she handed me these big gloves. They were like orange gloves that were massive, and she handed me a spare jacket.
Within the Holy Quran, Allah says, "Call upon me and I will answer you," promising us that if we ask from Him, He will respond. The value and importance of dua in the religion is so great that on multiple occasions within the Holy Quran, Allah has instructed us to turn to Him and seek help from Him. Allah loves those who turn to Him through prayer, to the point where the Holy Prophet has said that dua is the very essence of worship. The concept of dua allows us an opportunity to speak to our Creator, and although at times it may feel like He hasn't heard our prayers, it is important to understand He will always respond, but not necessarily in the way we want. He is all-knowing and has greater knowledge of what is truly beneficial in our circumstance.
Once I made it to Gilman, which was the very toughest part of the entire experience, getting to Uhuru, seeing that board was a sign of relief, because I had seen that board all my life. I've seen people taking pictures with that board all my life, and I've always wondered what it's like to stand there and take a picture beside it. And when I saw that board, maybe a few meters away, number one, I was like, yes, alhamdulillah, I've made it. I can now finally take a picture beside it. And I thought to myself, really? I mean, I've walked for the last 3.5, 4 days to take a picture with that. And then I looked around me and I saw the glaciers. I saw the crater, and I looked above me and there was just clear blue skies. And I said, subhanallah, this is beautiful, how lucky I am to be standing on top of the roof of Kilimanjaro.
The other people in our group, they had this app on their phone. It was like a stargazing app, and we used it to essentially look up into the sky and see what actually we were looking at. And you don't realize when you're looking up, but sometimes you can actually see other planets and they just look like stars. But it turns out we were looking at Mars, we were looking at Jupiter, we were looking at Saturn. And this is the kind of stuff which you would never really see from London, because when you look up at the sky over here, it's pretty bleak.
I was happy at my own achievement that I was physically able to endure the challenges to make it to Uhuru. And so I was very, very thrilled at my own personal fulfillment, or my personal achievement of making it to Uhuru. And having to do that, or having done it with my cousin, my cousin brother Rizwan, was even more fulfilling for me. And then carrying that flag of Abu Fadl Abbas alayhi salam from the bottom of the mountain all the way to the top of the mountain was even more fulfilling. That I was able to carry his banner and to show to the world that this flag bearer of Islam, who sacrificed his life for us, today we are able in his name to continue promoting his message to the rest of the world.
Allah's creations have been designed and created according to the highest heavenly standard of splendor, impossible to ever be replicated by anyone. However, with the fast pace of our daily lives and the growth of construction and technology, we often fail to appreciate the level of perfection and the depths of detail in the world around us. From the harmonious coexistence of animals and insects to the constant rotation of night and day and everything in between, leaving no room for error. Venturing on these expeditions gave the climbers an opportunity to remove themselves from the havoc of their usual lives and to instead fully immerse themselves in the raw beauty of Allah's creations in some of the most scenic parts of the world. Climbing up a mountain has its expected challenges, but climbing down has its own set of different obstacles to overcome.
The climb going down to me was worse than going up, just because by that time the weather was so bad, and because it was so steep downhill, like every step you took there was a possibility of you slipping.
The climb going down was harder than climbing up because of the fact that it started raining. The terrain was quite slippery. We were really exhausted, and then the knees were hurting a lot because you really exert yourself, and then coming down you have to obviously defy gravity and make sure that you keep on the ground. So I think it was much harder, although it was just 2.5 hours coming down.
As soon as we reached the summit, me and Mariam, Hanif, and I think 2 other girls, ladies, we just ran down the mountain. I cannot explain how we done that. I don't know how we done that. It was freezing, and going down the mountain is probably harder than climbing the mountain. And there was rocks everywhere, especially at the top of Ben Nevis. We were running down the mountain. I remember literally, no exaggeration, I was running down the mountain, and then when it gets to the end, so the mountain is like this and it goes around the spiral. So I was coming down one side, and then I would put my feet and like skid down that side, and then I would run down the other side and then skid. We just wanted to get off that mountain as soon as possible and get out of that awful weather condition.
Through patience, great things are accomplished.
It was then that we began, after X number of hours later, we started going down to where we started at the main gate of the Marangu route. We got down there, and then there was this park ranger who saw me in my dusty attire, and he asked me if I'd made it to the top and how was it. And I said I couldn't make it. He looked into my eye, and I said, you know what, I wonder what I'm going to tell my girls because I couldn't make it. And I also told him that I was glad that the friends I'd brought along had been able to make it, and that I was glad that they had a great sense of achievement, and I had a small role to play in that great feeling that they experienced or were experiencing. But what worried me was, what am I going to tell my girls? And he looked me in the eye and he said, his name was David Maige, I'm not going to forget the gentleman. He said that leadership is not about being able to finish a mission or an expedition necessarily, so long as the team makes it. These words were what I needed. I mean, this kind of reinforcement is what one needs, doesn't one? Because I think it was true. It is true. And he had a very valid point that if I couldn't make it, it was all right. I might have another opportunity to be able to do so, but that others had successfully done it. And that felt great. And that when I come back, when I would go back home, I knew I would be able to talk about this experience of being successful in the success of others.
One of the other things that I learned from climbing this mountain is just how short life can be as well. There was another group that were climbing the mountain with us. They were from South Africa. And we spent some good time climbing together, would have breakfast together, and would have good jokes climbing as well. And after we finished climbing and made it back, we discovered that one of the people in their group had actually passed away. And that was obviously a very saddening experience because this was one of the people that we were actually climbing with at the time who was with us. So it was very sad, and it was a reminder of just how short life can be.
It was obviously sad I couldn't make it. I'd taken along my friends as well as a leader of our group, and it was sad that I couldn't make it. But then You see, we have our plans, and then there are greater plans. And so I'm really fine with that part, that understanding, or based on that understanding, I'm really fine with it. Although obviously I wish I could have made it, but there we are.
Everyone who set out on either of the expeditions went with the hope of reaching the top. However, due to conditions out of their hands, be it weather or health restrictions, not all of them were able to reach the summit. But for everyone who took part, patience was a fundamental key in being able to climb. The virtue of patience is the foundation of a believer's faith. Throughout the Quran, Allah mentions the value of this virtue within a person, and it is an attribute greatly loved by Him. And verily, whoever shows patience and forgiveness, that would truly be from the things recommended by Allah.
My favorite part of the journey was when we all finished climbing the mountain. We had actually went back to the lodge that we were staying at, and we all kind of like sat there in disbelief that we just experienced what we had experienced, and we were all sitting there and explaining to each other like what was going through our minds and how proud of each other we were, and it was just a beautiful bonding experience.
The experience helped me discover more about myself and how far I can push to the limits where you are emotionally, mentally and physically challenged. So alhamdulillah, I think that was quite an eye-opener.
Climbing Ben Nevis is physically difficult. So even people that are not wearing the headscarf, not wearing loose garments, it's physically difficult for them. But one of the main reasons why I wanted to take this climb is to show the world that wearing a hijab, wearing loose garments, wearing whatever you want to wear, it wouldn't stop you from achieving what you want to achieve. And I believe that we did reach that. We did reach that point. Our guys constantly were asking us questions about the hijab and about Islam, and a lot of people that we met along the climb were asking us about it. And I think it is such a positive image to see active Muslim women. Us Muslim women, we can integrate within society. That's the purpose of hijab. Hijab is to protect a woman and ensure that she can integrate within society. She can be active within society. It's not to stop you from integrating within society. So I believe that the hijab sometimes is misunderstood, that women should take a step back and not go into the community and do what she has to do. When we see examples from the Ahlulbayt and examples, for example, Khadija alayhi salam, the wife of the Holy Prophet, they were the most active women that they were. They went into the community and really did make a positive impact within the community while wearing the hijab. Khadija alayhi salam was a businesswoman, a very successful businesswoman who worked and managed a lot of men and women, and while wearing hijab. So I think that's a big lesson for anyone to say that hijab is no barrier.
My most memorable part of the journey was when we were at the summit and raising the flags of Asad Abdulrazak. It was just a completely different experience, and you just felt like you were so close to the heavens, and you did it, and you were honored to represent the Ahlulbayt at such a high point.
Even though this trip took only 2 days, it was like the best 2 days. It was very inspirational and amazing, and the people there were just so caring, and you met new people and you do things that you don't imagine. And for me, it was really big because like now in our society, or in general, for example, how Paris, they're banning the hijab and stuff, it makes you rethink if you can do anything with your hijab. And if you can, like, when you want to apply for somewhere or go somewhere, you think, can I do it? Can I do it with my abaya? Can I do it with the hijab? And for me to go up about the highest mountain in Britain with my full hijab on and not having any problem, it feels like I can do whatever I want. And nobody can come and tell me that you are restricted because of your hijab, because I'm not. And I can do everything and whatever with the tawfiq from Allah. And all I need is tawfiq, and then I can conquer the world if I want to.
The teams managed to raise a combined £18,784, which was donated to the broadcast operations of Ahlulbayt TV to help the channel to further spread the pure message of Imam Hussain. Every step taken by the climbers to reach the summits was done with the intention to raise awareness of the Ahlulbayt and the religion Imam Hussain sacrificed his life to preserve. To stand strong on the peaks of the mountains with the flags says that we too stand strong on the side of justice, peace, love, and compassion.